Hey gang, so I am fresh back from the Caribbean and fresh back from vacation. I'm glad so many people noticed that I had bronchitis in my Banu Merchantman vid, you monsters. But I can breathe again, so that's good. We got new numbers out, so let's go ahead and look at them. Let's get this. Actually, just kidding. So basically what happened was normally we would get the roadmap roundup where you could go and you could look at everything. Unfortunately, what happened this time, as opposed to getting roadmap roundup and the release view, we got this instead, which was just a little post, and I'll give you the long and the short of it. I won't bother reading the whole thing. They said no updates for release view this week. We don't have any other insights on everything else. We're just trying to get 3.2.3.1 out the door, so deal with it. So that was the update. So yeah, there's the roadmap roundup. Nothing to report. So instead, I thought this might be a fun time to kind of catch up on things that I missed out on while I was gone. You've probably heard this from other content creators, but here's my take. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to do the very quick review on the Ironclad Q&A, going to look at Alien Week and going to look at the whole exploit situation. So if either of those three things, any of those three things sound interesting, here we go. Okay, so this one will be kind of quick. I did a video, I'll link it in the up above parts, to what I thought was going to happen with the Ironclad. Turns out I was largely correct. The big thing is that let's see if I can find a picture. This is something that exists on both the Ironclad and the Ironclad Assault. The doors do open, which is good to know. One thing that has change, or that was different that I wasn't expecting, these right here are the tractor beams. They're kind of on their own little arms. That is only on the base Ironclad. The Assault does not have the tractor beams, which I guess makes sense since it's primarily transporting ground vehicles. They can just drive around. They don't need to be tractor beamed anywhere. So it kind of makes sense. A little bit disappointing because it means some of the utility of that vehicle isn't there. The command module is usable between the different between the Ironclad and the Caterpillar, but they were suggesting that's a slightly different model, but they are compatible. It does have a quantum drive, so that's not just an escape craft. Some people were arguing with me on the comments, and since they've never really gone into detail with that, I couldn't argue with authority on that, because they could be just as correct as I am. At this point, we know that it actually is going to be its own little ship. You can think of it as a snub, but given the size of that command module, and at some point I'll actually walk around, if you've never seen the Caterpillar's command module, it is fair sized. It doesn't have a lot of room for cargo, although I assume they're going to update it a little bit so it is a little more self-contained. But it's got 4 beds, it's got a Drake style kitchen or galley, and it's got a head, toilet. So you could legit live on that thing for a little bit at least. So it is a self-contained ship. And the fact that it'll have its own quantum drive makes it a lot more useful. It kind of goes along with my theory that the Ironclad, sort of the main ship here, this thing, let's see if I can find a better picture. This thing right here, sans the command module, could be dropped off as a base of operations, especially since it has repair facilities in it. And yeah, I think that's about all I gotta say about this. If you have any questions, drop them down below. We could kind of theory craft a little bit on what I think this ship will do. But largely that other video, there wasn't anything in here that really makes me change my mind about what this ship is supposed to do. So let's go on to Alien Week. So yeah, Alien Week. This is one of those things that every single year, one of the big driving theories is, oh my God, we're going to get this really cool alien concept ship this year. They've only been doing Alien Week, I think, since like 2018 or 2019. it started around the same time Invictus did. It was basically Invictus, they sold a bunch of human ships, primarily the warships. And then Alien Week, they kind of sweep back and get the alien ships, which there aren't a lot of them in the game right now. And they very, very rarely, I'm really hard pressed to think of them ever doing a concept release during Alien Week. But this one's, at least so far, no different. So it's basically just a chance to pick up some of the alien ships. So you're talking the Centokii, the Sulian, the Nox, the Cartual, Banu Merchantman, Banu Defender. Banu Defender's pretty good. Well, what the hell? Let's just go down. I'll kind of give you my take, because at one time or another, I've owned all these ships. I was actually just flying around in the Sulian last night. But let's go. Actually, we could just do it this way. So the Sulian, do not think of this as a combat ship. Like, I see so many people saying, this thing sucks in combat. Yeah, it's a cargo mover. It's like a beginner cargo mover. It is the equivalent of the Nomad, which actually isn't bad in combat. This thing isn't bad in combat. I would pull, at least for this batch, I would pull the laser repeaters off of it and put on laser cannons, so the single shot ones. I like the light strikes just because they the energy bolt goes a lot faster on those, so it's a little bit, it's not hit scan, but it's fast. The other thing, it does carry a fair number of missiles. I like to pull them and put in size 2 rattlers, and it does make this thing a little bit more combat capable. But the problem with the Sulian is that it's got this gigantic cross section. You're basically flying a building at someone, and any fighter, even remotely qualified to fly a fighting ship, is going to be able to hit that ship pretty easily. So not a combat ship, kind of a fun one to run around, a lot like the Nomad. If you like the Nomad but you want something more alien-y, this is a good one to do it. This one, of course, can't carry a vehicle, so 1 mark for the humans on that one. So that's the Sulian. Kind of a cool one. I like it. Looks neat. Has a couple weird audio issues this patch, but that's every patch. There's some little glitch or something, they'll get it fixed. Opposed to Tokii, they've strengthened up the little winglets on this thing. Really maneuverable. The base guns are very cool. Again, you're dealing with the same thing with most of the other alien ships, is that it's just got this huge cross section, but them giving these wings more hit points has made it a little bit more durable than if you went and you saw Avenger 1's video on it, where he's just like, this thing is trash. It's just too big, way too easy to pull off the wings. One advantage this has, unlike the Band Defender, which I'll get to in a second, and the Cartu All, I believe. No, the Cartual's on the body too. The Jian ships, the guns are actually on the body, so if you pop off these wings, the engines now stay with the body, which actually is kind of an advantage, because you don't, I think you only lose missiles if you lose the wings. You don't lose the firepower. Or the maneuverability, because you still have the wings. It used to be you'd shoot off one wing and all of a sudden the thing would just start spinning. It'd be nearly impossible to control. They've kind of fixed that. So, and Post and Tokii, again, I would put this thing in about Saber levels of effectiveness, maybe a little bit more because of its maneuverability. It's a fun ship to fly. Great against NPCs. I would not take this thing up against a human player that knows what they're doing. But really fun to kind of run bounty missions on. Again, one thing I will say about alien ships is they are in real life very expensive. They've got an alien tax. So for an equivalent human fighter, which is technically more meta, you're going to be paying more. So just something to keep in mind. Probably buy it in game. Eventually in game they'll be very rare, and that's kind of what they're trying to make, is that artificial rarity with the price of the thing. Most people aren't going to be paying that much money for a fighter that isn't any better than a cheaper human equivalent. Like, this thing would get chewed up by a Gladius, for example, or an Arrow. Or the current meta, the Buccaneer, but I don't think that one's going to stick much past them introducing armor. Anyway, Opus Santokii, medium fighter, but got the size of a large fighter. The cross section is as big as a Vanguard, so very easy to hit, very fun to fly. Cool little ship, but let's move on. Even more extreme than the Santokii is the Cartual, but pretty much everything else applies. This is the Scout Fighter, which I think the cross section, just because the whole ship goes vertical, is probably larger than the Santokii. So you can sort of see the Santokii, it sort of stays flat and then the engines flare out. With the Cartual, whole thing flies this way. So I mean, you're shooting at this gigantic star shape. Again, Cartual is one of the older ships in the game. I would assume they're going to kind of go back and tweak this one day. And if they were going to do it, one suggestion I would have is just make these winglets, at least from the front, very thin. So you're basically shooting at almost a line as opposed to huge triangles that are flaring out from the thing. Or you just give it sort of same thing with the Santokii, you make the engines part of the body. Again, Scout Fighter, it does have the guns. I think they're either size 3 or size 4. They are pretty big for a small ship. It is pretty agile, pretty fun to fly. They, in theory, said that you could race with it, but the truth is it's so tall and its geometry is so wide, it can't really cut the gates like a smaller ship could, so it's not really good for that. It does have a very quick acceleration and is very maneuverable, though. Kind of fun to fly around. If I had to pick between these two, I'd go with the Santokii. The Poa Nox. So this is the motorcycle. You can see there's the dude right there. It's about the same length as the Dragonfly, but not the same width. It's narrower. For a while, this would be the bike that would, if you could fit a bike in a vehicle, this is the one that you would fit. Now, of course, we've got the little Pulse, which is probably the size of this front intake here. But yeah, very quick. I think the acceleration on it is very quick. I think it's still the fastest grav-lev vehicle in the game. Don't quote me on that. I have not checked that for a while. Nox is kind of a cool bike if you like bikes. There's not really a reason to have ground vehicles in the game yet, particularly not grav-lev vehicles, since they can be targeted by ground turrets at bunkers. So if you fly up to a hostile bunker in a Nox, it's gonna blow you up very quickly. But anyway, Nox, cool looking bike, very Akira feeling. Let's move on. So here's all their sales. Of course, they got the Banu Merchantman down there for War Bond, which means, actually, let's see what it's run at now. Any guesses? I'm going to say 660. 650. I was off by 10. Well, it says 2 options available. So you got the War Bond edition. So if you're putting new money in, if you got $600 burning a hole in your pocket, you can get a Merchantman. Used to be $250 to give you an idea. And the standard edition, this is going to be if you're using credit or something like that, is $650. That's if you're upgrading from something else. Which I would say check out Info Runners, because they probably got a couple chains built to get one of these for $10 or something ridiculous like that. My advice on the Merchantman, which is my favorite ship, is probably wait until it's in game, because it's gonna be a while. If you buy the ship right now and upgrade it to it, I believe you get at least 2 ships as loaners until this ship is in the game. One is the C2, and the other one, I think, is a Banu Defender. So you get those 2 ships as loaners when you buy a Banu Merchantman until it's in the game, and then you get the Banu Merchantman. But Yeah, at this point it kills me, but I think this is pretty close to its final cost. It might go up a little bit, but you might, at this point, you might as well wait until this thing's in the game until you buy it. They'll have one more sale at probably the 650 mark before they jump it when they drop it in the game. But yeah, there's no reason to get it now. If the price were still 250, I'd be like, grab this ship right now. But it isn't, so don't. Unless you got $600 just laying around doing nothing for you. Blade, Vandal Light Fighter was meta for a hot minute. I'm not sure how it's doing this patch, but 275. It's probably not better than a Gladius or an Arrow, so spend $100 less and you get something. Unless you really like the Cylon aesthetic. Band Defender. So Band Defender is fairly maneuverable. It's a fairly large ship. This is one of my favorite ships to run bunkers in because it's actually got, and kind of like a daily driver when I'm not running cargo, it's got a fairly large interior that you can fit a 1 SCU box in pretty easily. You don't have to like finagle it and get it the right angle to fit through the door. It kind of drops down and has this little crab mount that, if you've ever been watching this, I use my Band Defender for a lot of the B-roll. 2 seats, 2 beds, which granted the second bed is kind of pointless right now. 220. So to give you an idea, this thing has 4 size 3 guns on gimbals, and this one has, I think, 2 size 4s and maybe 2 size 3s, something like that. But it's squishy. The Band Defender is not squishy. It's fairly maneuverable this patch. Band Defender holds its own in combat, and they finally fixed its tachyon guns, the singes, so they actually do damage now. It used to be if you had the first thing you do when you got a Defender was pull off the singes and put on literally anything else. Like you could have Buttery's cupcake shooters and they would have done more damage than the Singe. Now the Singes actually do damage. So Band Defender, I kind of like this one for, it's a good runabout. It's a good ship for just running general missions. You're not going to be running cargo in it, but it's a heavy fighter, so go fig. Glaive kind of falls in the same category as the Blade. Huge guns, if I remember right. It has like 2 size 5s or something ridiculous like that. Carries a good number of missiles. I think these are 2 size 3. So yeah, this thing has quite a bit of firepower. This is the old model. Once Squadron 42 drops, you'll be getting the new models, which are very cool looking. Is it worth $350? No, unless you really like the Cylon aesthetic, it's not worth $350. You could get, man, I think that you could get something like a C2 or a Caterpillar for that, and on a couple cargo runs, you'll be able to buy a Glaive in game. So I would suggest doing that instead, unless you really want this ship as your cornerstone. These things are just too expensive. You can see that the prices on all these are kind of ridiculous. Cartu All, we already talked about. Bandu Merchantman, we already talked about. Nox, we already talked about. Prowler, this is my favorite drop ship, but its gameplay isn't really in yet. $440. Again, you're kind of getting into ridiculous territory here. The lore on the Prowler was that they were so stealthy that people on big human warships during the human Tavaran wars wouldn't realize that there was a Tavaran Prowler near them until they were being boarded. So they were so quiet and so stealthy that they could open up the side doors and unload a Tavaran boarding party onto the ship, and the first time the crew on board that ship would be aware that they were being boarded was when there's Tavaran running through the hallways shooting people. So supposed to be extremely stealthy. It does have a couple advantages over the other current drop ships. Think of this as kind of a SEAL Team 6 Blackhawk. It has I believe 5 doors along the side that open up, so everybody inside can just bail out from their own door. They don't have to all go through the back ramp or jump off a big side door. In lore, it was supposed to have very low acceleration and okay top speed, which all contributed to it being very sneaky. You can kind of see these blue things here were gravlevs, so it could like come up and kind of link to another ship without having to do the boarding ship thing, whatever that one is, the Legionnaire, where it kind of has this whole proboscis and has to link up to the docking ring on another ship. This doesn't have to do that because it's got those gravlevs. They don't work in game yet. There's a lot of things that aren't in for this game right now. I don't even think it has its stealth mechanics in. So right now it has the cross section of a huge fighter. So take that for what it's worth. Very cool looking ship though. Raylan, obviously not in the game. The Sulian was kind of the study for building the Raylan, and you'll hear me talk about those two a lot when I talk about the Banhammer Merchantman. Basically, the only Banu ship we have in game right now is the Defender, and it's kind of so self-contained that it doesn't really build any asset packs for the Banu ships at large. They built the Sulian so that they could build the Raylan easier. Raylan is probably somewhere in between, I'd say, Starfarer and Connie size, so it's kind of in that mid-range. Big ship, like it's got at least 3 levels in here. I believe these are only size 4 guns, but this is a cargo mover. You can sort of see all these triangles here. This is external cargo, so think like the Hull series. Can't carry as much as the Hull C, but it carries more than the Hull B. So it's kind of a weird tweener. Think of it that way. It's GN, so it's going to be really maneuverable. Not much else to say. They don't have it in the game. They did a sprint, like a research sprint on it late last year or 2 years ago. So they've done some work on it. My theory, once they dropped the Sulian, was that that research sprint was more to build the Sulian and kind of get the design language down than it was about actually building the Raylan. So this one is not in production right now, but I don't think it would be too far off. I had a theory, and I've mentioned this before with Squadron 42, that for a long time I thought the Banu were going to be the focus in Squadron 42. Yeah, outside of the Van Duel. Would be nice if it was Tavarin. It would be cool if we had Tavarin in the game for Squadron 42, but doesn't look like that's going to happen. But we know they've done facial animations for Xi'an for Squadron 42 and animations for Xi'an. So Xi'an are definitely going to be in Squadron 42 at some point. And it would make sense that the Raylan would be one of the ships we'd have there, unless they're all flying around in Sulians and Cartuals and Centokiais, which is possible, but yeah, we don't know yet. Centokii, talked about that above. Sulian, just talked about it now and talked about it earlier. Talons, so these guys are kind of cool. Again, alien ship, so the wings kind of can pop out a little bit and flare out like a bird. They're better this patch, which is kind of cool. They've got big ass guns here, so they used to be size 3 on gimbals. I think you can put size 4s on them, which is ridiculous. So it has 2 size 4s and then a bunch, like not a bunch. It has, I'll get to the one that has a bunch in a second, but I think 4 to 6 size 2 missiles, so not nothing. Very maneuverable. Usually when I fly this thing dogfighting in space, I'll pull the wings. You can actually change the transform mode, and it doesn't change much. Basically, you just have an angle on this little piece here, which it used to be easy for other ships to shoot this part off, and then the ship would be uncontrollable. Not sure if they've fixed that or not, but I'd always tuck in my wings and make it a little bit harder to hit. Pretty fun ship to fly around. Tiny, $150. Not bad. Again, I would say get something else and then buy the Talon in game. That might not be an option for too much longer, but it is now. The Talon Shrike, so you will notice this one has little tiny guns, like right up here. I think they're size 2s, but what this thing has is 24 missiles on it. Like these pods right here are for shooting missiles. And missiles, patch to patch, are hit or miss because they're anyway. It can only fire 2 missiles at a time, but it carries a ton of them. If you're flying with a group of people, these sort of missile runners, so the Fury MX, the Freelancer Miss, the Talon Shrike. There's another missile boat out there. There's a couple missile boats out there. Oh, the new Saber Firebird carries 24 missiles on it too. The best way to use those ships, rather than trying to go out and do solo bounties, is to go out with some other people, like 2 or 3 friends, and then you hang a ways off and kind of be innocuous, and then just sort of like launch 1 or 2 missiles in, just to kind of keep that ship having to maneuver to dodge the missiles, as opposed to getting a lock on your friends and being able to shoot the crap out of them. That's what these things are for, is they're more harassers. And we come full circle, and here we are back at the blade. Would I recommend the Talon or the Talon Shrike? Kind of depends. If they look really cool. $115. Again, just looking at the demographics of the people who are watching this, you're probably old enough to have a career and your own ideas of how to spend your own money. So if it's worth it to spend $115 for a cool little fighter, knock yourself out. Well, Sentoki, they got the upgrade. The Glaive, they got it. Down the paints. So the Harmony paints, I think we've had the Harmony paint for the Talon and the Banu Defender and the Prowler and the Nox. I think the Cartu also. These last 4, we've seen them before. But the Sentoki and the Sulian, I think, are new for the Harmony paints. They're kind of cool. They're sort of iridescent, but they're purple and kind of a teal color, and they kind of fade into each other. I mean, you can kind of see it right here. I'll see if I can get this picture up. Well, there. You're welcome. But, I mean, you can kind of see how it does it. So, I mean, if that kind of paint job tickles your fancy, okay. And then a slight variation on this is the Ocelus paints. Again, we've had them for the Talon and the Defender and the Prowler and the Nox, and I think the Cartu all before. I did get these for a little while and then melted them. They're just not my cup of tea, but they might be yours. Again, paints are kind of one of those that I could take or leave. This is interesting that they're charging 11 for the Sentoki, but only 5 for the Sulian, because the Sulian is considerably larger than the Sentoki. So again, I think CIG should go the route that MechWarrior Online went and sell the patterns and let us choose the colors. I think they would sell way more paints that way. And then you have a bunch of paints that are behind a paywall too. Like you can pay $1 to $3 for a paint, a particular color. But you'd have things like the base colors, like white, black, red, green, blue, orange, yellow, maybe a couple shades or tints in there. But then you have things like hot pink and blood red and fantastic black or whatever. And actually that one on the Sentoki does look pretty good. But I like the white paint job on the Sentoki. Anyway, Wanderer paints. This one's silver, and again, the silver is metallic and reflective. And it's kind of got these blue sort of spiderweb shapes on it. Kind of a cool paint. Again, if it tickles your fancy and you want it, the only way you get these paints is by paying money for them. Again, I think CIG should sell the pattern and individual colors, sell those separately. And I think they do a lot better on these than selling like a Prowler specific paint for $16. Not many Prowler people are going to pay that, although I have paid for paint jobs for the Prowler in the past. Just gonna say. Extras, they have, let's see, a starter pack. A War Bond, $72 for a Sulian. That armor, so let's wait until it comes around. This armor right here, at least the last time I tried it on, can't take a backpack. So use with care. This thing right down here, the Xanthuli or Xanthul, however you want to say that, Ascension Kit. Last time I tried this, it did not take a backpack, so less useful than you would think. But $72 for that combination, not terrible. I'm guessing 124 is all of the paint jobs they've got there. Again, probably not worth it. GN Experience Pack, that's going to be all the GN ships. This is going to be all the Tavaran ships. Looks like they've got 3. Let's see what's in there. It's the Talon Shrike and just the Talon Shrike? Really? That's it? And the armor. Yeah, that isn't worth it. Don't get that. The Shrike is very niche. And then the completion pack, of course, you're getting all this is concierge only, so you have to have, I think, $1,000 in the game. I don't know, I believe through that a long time ago. But you get all the alien ships and all the paint packs, I would assume. Now that they've just had the Talon Shrike, maybe they don't. Let's take a look at. So, Talon Shrike, Prowler, Defender, Nox, Cartual, Glaive, Blade, Centoki, Merchantman, Rail. Oh, you do get the Merchantman in there. That still seems a bit steep. Lifetime insurance, you do get lifetime insurance, which is kind of becoming meaningless these days, but some people need it. Let's see what else they got. That's it. Alien gear. Unless you really, really, really like the way that these things work, these things are almost never worth it. Again, the Xanthul or the Xanthuli in the past couldn't take a backpack, which cuts down its utility considerably. It is a cool looking armor. It's kind of very 1970s aesthetic almost. I don't think it fits the GN at all. Of course, we haven't seen GN in game yet, so who knows what their armor looks like, but I would assume big turtles wouldn't have a shape like a human. But yeah, it's neat looking armor. It's just its utility is kind of questionable. Ascension rifle for $5. If you really like the S71, the Gemini S71, which is what this gun is, just run the clear land grabbers mission or whatever it is at the various outposts on either Microtech or Lorville. And some of the bad guys there carry S71s. That's sort of what I do when a new patch is dropped and they've wiped all my stuff, or if I'm running low on guns, I'll go run a couple of those missions, pop those guys, and steal their S71s. Best place to get it. This armor does pack a backpack, so it's a little more useful in my opinion. I wish they came in more colors. Like this one, the white is kind of a shoot me here point on both of these armors. I kind of like the green a little bit better, even though red and black and white is the carnival colors. For $10, I don't know. It's cool looking armor. Again, you're an adult, you can make your own choices. This First Contact hoodie, I do actually own one of these. These are very cool and very comfortable. Let's see, what are they selling them for now? $48. So these actually are on sale. I think I paid the $65 for mine. Let's see if it goes up on sizes. No, it's still $48. So if you really want a Star Citizen hoodie, they are comfortable. Again, You're an adult, make your own decisions. Let's move on to new Xenothreat. So this is the next level of Xenothreat. Again, they're going to have another ship sale here, but this is going to have obviously the updated Idris in it. We're probably going to have to board the thing. Looks pretty cool. Xenothreat, this version where you're actually fighting the fleet out in space, is fun. It's a lot of fun. So we'll see what they've done with it in this latest version. Just because I was going on vacation when they were dropping this in Evocati, I didn't get a chance to test it much, so I will be breaking out the Carnival and we'll be going and doing this. So see y'all out there if you see it. So Assault on Stanton. I'm not going to play through this. You can watch it on your own. One thing I did want to do, yeah, so it doesn't look like they've changed this much. So they'll kind of have a warning that sort of says, hey, Xenothreat is attacking. Then resupply, you're going to go out and there'll be derelict starfarers out in space. And you're going to have to unload them and basically get all these little boxes, load them onto cargo ships and fly them back. And occasionally Xenothreat will be attacking. They won't be attacking in the Idris. They typically attack in fighters, things like Gladius and like Vanguard seem to be the most common, Buccaneers, that sort of thing. I'm sure they're going to kind of mix it up this time, but it kind of gives people that don't do combat things something to do, which is neat. You can load up your cargo ships and you actually are contributing to it. Xenothreat is a good event, and then once you've resupplied the Javelin and it can take off and attack things, then they have the big attack with I think 2 or 3 Idrises, and you get to destroy the Idris, which is a fun time. And if you've successfully resupplied the Javelin, it gets in the fight too. To this point, it's kind of hit or miss how effective those ships are. Sometimes they'll just sit there in space and just kind of like slowly circle around, and if you're in a really big ship and you hold really, really still, maybe the Idris would shoot you with the railgun and one-shot you, but that is rare. I would expect them to be a little more lively in this patch, but don't quote me. So what have we got for ships dropping in this sale? The Avenger Titan, which I think is one of the best all-around starters in the game. Can't carry a rock, but can carry grav bikes in the back of it. You can carry a little bit of cargo. Pretty decent dogfighter. I do recommend the Titan when people are starting. C1 Spirit, same deal. Pretty good starter. Flies really well. Constellation Andromeda, pretty beefy, especially if you can get 1 or 2 friends to fly with you and kind of put them in the guns or on the snub even, or even just sitting in one of the co-pilot seats and control the missiles. This thing has missiles for days. Very good ship. Again, $240. So compare that to the alien ships from earlier. Gives you an idea. The Eclipse torpedo bomber, one-trick pony. It carries 3 size 8 torpedoes. Again, $300. It is very sneaky though. The stealth for the Eclipse actually is in game, and then it's got like 2 size 2 guns, I think, that are ballistic repeaters. I typically pull those and put energy on there so it can at least stay in the fight a little bit longer, but the big torpedoes are what it's known for. If you are engaging the Idris with one of these, something like a Talon Shrike is good to buddy up with, because they can just keep launching little size 2 missiles until the Idris is out of its bursts, out of its flares, and then you launch the torpedo and it has no way to defend itself. Something to keep in mind. FC Hornet Mark II. So this is our new buddy here. This is the F7C. So as opposed to having the gun turret here and here, it has one hard point under the nose, and then this is a way it can carry cargo. Good little fighter. They're pretty neat. M2 Hercules, this is the troop transport, so it carries tonks and has room to carry, I think, like 12 guys or something on the port side. Carries a little less cargo than the C2. Reclaimer, obviously, big salvager. Reliant Tana is the combat version of the Tana, much like the alien ships. Huge cross section for the type of fighter it is. Does carry a fair number of missiles. Its gun loadout actually isn't terrible. Badly needs an update. Tally, of course, Tally is a bigger bomber. Now its modularity is in the game. To fully crew it up, I think you need 7 people, including the pilot. Note that if you are the pilot, the only thing you will control is the torpedoes. All of the guns are manned guns, and you have to have a person sitting in that turret in order to shoot them. So obviously, as a pilot, you're not going to be using that. Typically, if you run with 3 people, so pilot and these 2 gunners, it's a pretty effective ship, especially if you get the torpedo version. So, not bad. Scorpius Antares. So this is the one with the snare and the... Does it have a snare? I know you can lock ships down. Won't be as useful in Xenothreat, but kind of a cool little ship. Carries... I think like 16 missiles. It can shoot 4 at a time. Good gun loadout. You don't have the turret, which is kind of what the regular Scorpius is known for. I think the regular Scorpius is more useful for Xenothreat. This one, it's still a cool looking ship if you want to fly around in an oversized X-Wing. Vanguard. Harbinger is the torpedo one. I think it's got a couple size 5 torpedoes, like 3 or 4 of them. So not bad. Again, I would say probably put a person in the turret. The turret isn't huge. I think they're size 2s or size 3s, so not awful, but it can keep people off your back. Yeah, Vanguards are pretty beefy, tanky ships. Hoplite is the dropship version. Sentinel is the E-Warfare version, which everybody's like, oh, this thing got horribly nerfed, but I don't know. I think it's got an EMP. A big EMP. Warden is the heavy fighter version, so this one's going to have the most missiles and guns and I think hit points. I don't really do deep dives on like the hit points and all that. Vulture, of course, is the salvager, which between this and the reclaimer, yeah, if you come in after the fight and just salvage all the wrecks, you could make a ton of money in Xenothreat because there's always tons of wreck ships around that. Just typically Xenothreat because the AI isn't super good yet, but yeah. If you just kind of want to make money and don't really want to participate in the event, salvager or 2, probably not a bad idea. Ship packs, let's see, we got, what was that? The Wolf pack, 325. Again, these packs, you usually do save some money, but I would say unless you're actually running an org or you got children that are old enough to do something, these can be kind of good ways to get a few ships. Gladius, Avenger, Titan, and Hurricane, those are all pretty good ships. Let's see what else it comes with. A bunch of paints, the Archangel armor, which is pretty cool armor. Yeah, that's not a terrible pack. Let's see if it calls up the Archangel armor. So that's sort of their Rhyme armor, which is cool looking. Kind of look like a Special Forces operative. I think it's light armor. Big guns. Yeah, so it comes with the sniper rifle. Assuming one of these, yeah, the cheaper one is War Bond. So again, War Bond, you put in new money. Let's see. Yep, that's it for that. The Eclipse is a War Bond upgrade. Not bad. M2 is a War Bond upgrade, which I think I used to own all 3 Hercules. I still have an A2, but the plan is to CCU it. I do have this CCU to upgrade it to a Nautilus, but I'm not going to upgrade until it's in game. C2 is a great cargo mover. M2 I think is kind of the best blend of the both because it's got a couple more guns and more hit points. little bit thicker shields, I believe. But yeah, that's it for Xenothreat. Should be a fun event. I will see y'all out there because I will definitely be participating in that one. And then the last thing I was going to touch on is update on AUC exploits and account suspension. So this is one of the first times they've kind of done a big ban. Which is interesting because this is something they said for, they kind of were thinking for a while there, we're just going to kind of observe how people are going to break and exploit the game. And we might hand out a couple warnings, but they kind of wanted to encourage people to do, and encourage is the wrong word, but allow people to cheat to see how they were breaking the game. Then they'd fix those exploits, and then if people started exploiting past that point, then they'd start banning them. Looks like they've started doing it. Like on this one, they said there's an exploit, and this is an exploit, don't do it. And people kept doing it, and because to this point CIG hasn't done anything, now they're doing something. So this is interesting, and it sort of spells out why they're doing this in this paragraph. So at this stage in development, exploits and issues like these are likely to arise, which is something I've said before, which is one of the benefits of open development and working closely with our community. Identifying, testing, and reporting exploits is acceptable and encouraged. We've gained valuable insights through your issue council reports, and we thank you for that. However, once an exploit is identified and confirmed, continued abuse for personal gain will not be tolerated and will result in action on our part. So this is the warning shot. It's kind of, hey, you identified an exploit, good job. If you keep exploiting it, then you are breaking the game and you are not helping us at all, and we will ban you once CIG comes out and says, hey, this is an exploit, we're aware of it, thanks for your hard work. Yeah, and I am all for that, because flying around 50 C2s that were just kind of abandoned places because they were taking advantage of this exploit, not fun. Anyways, account suspensions are in the game now. So once you hear about an exploit, once you start seeing all the vids of try this one cool trick to make 1 million AUC in 30 seconds, don't do that. Don't do that. It would suck to be the victim of an irresponsible content creator that is just trying to get clicks and get views on information that's outdated, and you get banned for it. So don't fall for it. Yeah. And that's all I got for this one, gang. So a little bit longer than expected and not much of a sprint watch, but there's a lot to catch up on. So catch me.